This slide is showing a clinical homeostatic imbalance, and it's one in which some women, their ovaries and adrenal glands produce small amounts of androgens, which are male sex hormones, but there are tumors on these organs which are abnormally large, producing these androgens. So, an example of this is due to what's called polycystic ovary syndrome. And in this case, it's the ovaries that are producing the large amount of androgens. Now, normally in females, the adrenal glands do produce some androgens, and that's completely normal. As you'll be learning in A&P2, there's a region of the adrenal cortex that does that. But when this happens, as you see on this slide, you'll notice some excessive hair in the female that normally should not be there. And this can lead to signs of masculinization, excessive hairiness, which is called hirsutism, and in most cases, no clinical problems are found, and it can be treated. Now, in the case of hair thinning and baldness, we've all probably heard of alopecia. The term alopecia is hair thinning in both sexes after the age of 40. And the hair is not replaced as quickly as it sheds. So, true or frank baldness is a genetically determined and sex influence condition, whereas male pattern baldness is actually due to a follicular response to a type of androgen, which is called dihydrotestosterone. So we can see in these images up here views of male pattern baldness and the differences between female pattern baldness, which is shown at the bottom. Our next slide is on nails. And nails are scale-like modifications of the epidermis that contain hard keratin. This is different than the type of soft keratin which we find in the rest of the epidermis. So this would be analogous to claws or hooves on other animals. So it acts as a protective covering for the distal and dorsal surface of fingers and toes. The parts of the nail include the free edge, the nail plate, and the root. And deep to the nail bed, or to the nail rather, is what's called the nail bed. And this is simply the epidermis underneath the keratinized nail plate. So we have the nail matrix, first of all, which is the part that's responsible for nail growth. The nail folds are skin folds that overlap the border of the nail. There's the opuntium, which is the fold that projects onto the surface of the nail body, also called the cuticle. The hyponychium, notice that prefix hypo, that's the area under the free edge of the plate that accumulates dirt. So nails normally appear pink because of underlying capillaries. There's a lot we can tell by looking at the nails of a patient. So the color is very important. It should appear pink. If it appears to be like a darker bluish color, that could indicate some sort of cyanosis, lack of oxygen in the blood. And the thickened nail matrix, which appears white, is called the lunule. And it's kind of called this because it looks like a half moon. So again, abnormal color or shape can be an indicator of disease. So the anatomy of it could indicate some sort of abnormal physiology. This slide is showing the structure of the nail, which we just talked about in the previous slide. You can first see the nail matrix at the proximal end of the nail, the nail root, the proximal nail fold, This is the opuntium or cuticle, which is shown in this image and also at this part right here. The white region, which we don't really see right here, is the lanule, shown in this area. Then there's the lateral nail fold, the nail plate itself, and then the free edge of the nail. The area where sometimes we get dirt underneath our nail is called the hyponychium. And underneath that would be the nail bed. So a clinical homeostatic imbalance associated with nails is, again, that nail appearance is very helpful in diagnosing some diseases, such as a yellow tinged may indicate a respiratory issue or a thyroid gland disorder. A thickened yellow nail could be due to a fungal infection of the nail. There's something called spoon nail, which is koilonchia, and that could be due to an outward concavity of the nail that may indicate iron deficiency. You can almost see something like that here indicated. Also, Bowes lines are horizontal lines across nails that may indicate severe illnesses such as uncontrolled diabetes, heart attack, or maybe even cancer chemotherapy. One of the accessory structures in the integumentary system is, of course, sweat glands. And sweat glands are also called sudoriferous glands. And then there's a few different varieties of them, but all skin surfaces, except for nipples and part of external genitalia, have these sweat glands. So there's about 3 million of them per person. The two main types are either eccrine or merocrine sweat glands, as well as apocrine sweat glands. There's also some other modified sweat glands as well. But these sweat glands, they contain myoepithelial cells, myo because there's a little bit of muscle there, and they contract upon the nervous system stimulation, which forces sweat into those glands. So we're going to take a look at the first type, which is the eccrine or the merocrine glands. They're the most numerous type. They're on the palms of the hands, soles of the feet, and the forehead. Undoubtedly, on a really hot day, you felt sweat running from your forehead down into your eyes. That's from these eccrine sweat glands. The ducts are always going to connect to the pores in the skin, and their most important role is thermoregulation, temperature control. So they're regulated by the sympathetic nervous system, which you'll learn a lot about later in the semester. It's the fight or flight nervous system. Their sweat, you can easily drink it, so if it runs all the way down your forehead to your mouth, it doesn't hurt you. The sweat is mostly water. It's 99% water, has some salts in it, vitamin C, antibodies, and also something called dermcidin, which is a microbe-killing peptide, and some metabolic waste, which is one of the examples as to why the integumentary system is an excretory gland. So these appendages are shown here. We have an eccrine gland on the right, and you can see an eccrine gland here. We can see that the gland itself is associated with the sweat pore that runs to the skin. We're next going to talk about oil glands, which are sebaceous glands, and this is a micrograph basically of a sebaceous gland. So the second sweat gland is called the apocrine sweat gland, and it's kind of specifically located in the stinky areas. So the axillary, the armpit, also the anogenital areas. And it secretes a more viscous, milky, or yellowish sweat that contains fatty acids and proteins. And it's the bacteria that break down that sweat, and that's what leads to the body odor. So technically, there's not going to be a smell until the bacteria start to break down those substances. So they're larger than eccrine glands, and they begin functioning at puberty. And there's also some modified apocrine glands, which are ceruminous glands. They secrete earwax or cerumen, and mammary glands, which secrete milk.